Hey there, everyone. Thank you for joining us on another evening of the Political Deep Dive. I'm Dave Valente. Right now, I'm flying solo, so we'll get into some of the things. It is a very snowy West Virginia as we go into the evening hours here on Sunday night. We've been getting snow. Now I think it's switched over to freezing rain, which is going to make it even more fun tomorrow. Trying to get that snow off the driveways, but I know a lot of people throughout the South and Appalachian Mountains are definitely dealing with the snow right now. So it's it's pretty interesting. So hopefully we maintain power with the ice. There's always a chance that the power goes out on us, and we're stuck with nothing. Um, like I said, the rest of the crew has not shown up yet, so we'll start going into the news of the week. So the biggest news that we've seen so far this week was the escalation of the January 6th uh, investigation by the FBI, Justice Department, with the issuing of arrest warrants and indictments for the Oath Keepers founder, Mr. Rhodes. What's his first name? Stuart Rhodes. um, Stuart Rhodes is a former paratrooper and a Yale educated lawyer, which was kind of surprising to me. Uh, is the guy who runs the Oath Keepers. There's a whole lot of information that's been as much as the federal government wants to give us at this point, but he's been indicted on 5 federal charges. The most serious one is seditious conspiracy, which carries the possibility of 20 years if he is convicted of it. This is a very serious escalation of the issue. Oh, we've got Dan the Man Fishman. He's going to join us here in a moment.
I am sorry, just turning on the OBS.
There we go. Streamlabs OBS. I've been thinking about trying to start using Streamlabs when I do my show, but I'm kind of worried about the resource allocation on my computer. So
I mean, it's pretty lightweight, all things being said.
sure, sure.
Brushing my hair in the camera,
Looking
it's
said.
reverse. People are just gonna have to accept the fact that that's what I look like. All right, what were you saying was an extreme escalation?
The extreme escalation of the Oath Keepers, the January 6th investigations. The Oath Keeper
Oh yeah.
founder Stuart Rhodes has been arrested, along with I think 8 or 9 others. One other member was accused of sedition conspiracy. Um, though I think the most worrisome thing that came uh, out of this was the idea of the hotel room in Virginia that several people were
So I
staged
think
at.
the most worrisome thing that came. Sorry.
No, I hear you.
Uh yeah, what I am like, I mean, having rewatched the footage and now, all these investigations coming out, there was a lot of sinister shit planned.
Oh yeah,
And the idea, the people who are sort of in denial of, it was just some exuberant kids. It's not like that.
well, I think to an extent there were, you know,
There were some
there
people.
were some, like, at the beginning, like, they went up on the steps, and all of a sudden, the police kinda stepped aside, and they were like, "Oh, well, maybe we can go a little further," and they kinda pushed it. But there were people in there, especially these Oath Keeper guys that they were describing going up the east side looking for Nancy Pelosi.
Well,
Um,
yeah. And I think, they had right. I mean, they clearly had premeditation
yeah,
what they're going to do. Like the people who showed up there with the handcuffs, the plastic cuffs, and all the other things. And it's an interesting thing because there comes a question: at what point in time should there have been a much stronger response? I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
what would have happened, right? If the officers had defended their property in the same way that we would say a homeowner is entitled to defend their property.
Sure. I mean, what would have happened if I mean, yeah, there was Ashley Babbitt who got shot breaking
Yep.
into the congressional leadership office. But beyond that, I mean, what if they came out guns a-blazing?
Yeah.
How would that have gone? I would have I would assume that this hotel room full of ammunition and weapons might have been used in that case, but I also think that it might have been used had they actually found Nancy Pelosi or several congressmen and women
Yeah.
and were able to take them hostage. Then they would have been able to bring those guns in and really escalate things.
Yeah. And I think that that I for me, obviously, I'm no Nancy Pelosi fan, but I definitely agree that's the wrong way to go about doing things. And
Yeah,
so the question becomes, what what has changed? And we don't really know. And I'm glad that we don't know
yeah.
because I think that should be concealed. However, there's there was the whole thing with Gretchen, what's her name? Right? The guys who were going to kidnap the governor of Michigan.
Oh yeah, Gretchen Whitmer. Yeah,
Yeah. We're going to see more of this as the level of anger in the country increases. And the only answer to it is to say, yeah, we shouldn't. I mean, are these people being irrationally angry? I don't know. It's hard to say because you have to get into somebody else's head,
yeah.
and things can make you angry. But in terms of figuring out what the long term solution is, the best possible solution is to say, let's have a system where we can live together and not be furious with each other all the time. And, we talked about this last time. We used to have a system where we were all concerned about our own personal liberty, right? If you were pro choice, you wanted to make sure that you kept government out of the abortion issue. If you were pro gun, you wanted to keep government out of the gun issue. And the thing is that, you wanted your liberty. And that meant that you could still be friends because even if you were a pro choice, anti gun person, you were arguing for the government to be kept out of it. And so the gun people weren't going to be threatened by you. But now we have this scenario where whoever's in charge, Republican or Democrat, says, you know what? We've got this opportunity. Let's impose our will on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's when we get so angry. And the thing is, that is worth fighting for.
It is. I was talking about this on the radio on Friday that really American politics has gotten to the point where it's it's not really there to do anything real. It's there to inflame both sides uh, and not really get anything done. I mean, we'll talk about the Voting Rights Act and some other things later, but really American politics has gotten, at least on the national level and to a great extent on the state level, it's gotten to a point where it's just to make us angry,
Exactly.
and then to send out fundraising letters, to make us irrationally angry at one side or the other side, and then try and fundraise off of it.
Yeah. You couldn't be more right because and I'll give you a great example is that, in the aftermath of January 6th, all three major parties had windfall fundraising days. Which is crazy, right?
Yeah,
You would think that you would say, "Oh, you know what? Somebody's gonna be embarrassed or whatever," but actually, no. Everybody and so, in many ways, obviously, libertarians weren't involved in it at all, but the Republicans and the Democrats could have planned this because they use crises. They go from crisis to crisis to justify the existence of government, and that's where we're breaking down, and because they have the crisis, that allows them to raise money from people who are concerned about the crisis. If they didn't have crises, if they didn't have problems, they wouldn't have a reason to raise all this money in the first place.
no, and I mean, look at it this way: the what what are you going to be able to raise money off of? The failure to do something like the Voting Rights Act,
Right.
or the filibuster, or are you going to be able to raise money off of solving that issue? Which is, I mean, you think that the system is I mean, I think it's just completely broken, and you can't fix it the way it currently is with just 2 parties, with just the incentives that we built into the system. Uh, it can't be fixed
Right.
because there's the incentive to not fix things. And,
Yeah.
as a libertarian, we do kinda hesitate when we talk about fixing things in Washington. Bipartisanship, I think, is an ancient Native American term that means screwing you. Um, but there is no focus on actually fixing issues. It's just keep them inflamed until the election cycle, and we can fundraise the hell off of it.
Yeah. And you're 100% right. In many ways, they're following the model of the military industrial complex,
Yeah,
which, has an incentive. They're like, if everything's calm, if there's peace in the world, we don't have anything to be upset about. We can't get people to spend money on buying weapons. And so it's worthwhile if we have all these things that are going wrong throughout the world. Same things happening for, you know, political systems where they say, oh, if everything were awesome, people wouldn't care about politics and there wouldn't be any money and politicians wouldn't have any power. And in
exactly.
fact, they don't even really want one party rule because one party rule, again, kills your fundraising because why do you care? I mean,
Yeah,
people maybe run inside their party and fight against each other, but it's not the same.
that's why we've got a yes and a yes sir party. I mean, that's really when you look at the
Did you say
Democrats.
we have a yes and a yes sir party?
Yes,
I love that phrase. That's
yeah.
great.
Actually, I heard that one of my favorite professor of Iranian history talked about how Iran had a yes and a yes sir party, and they party democracy. But it really is frustrating uh, that we've just been allowed to be led down this pathway, and I don't know how we get out of it. I mean, we could definitely stand to have more parties in the system. We could definitely stand to have a better electoral system. We can definitely stand to have better laws when it comes to bribing public officials rather than calling it campaign finance or
Uh-huh.
campaign donations. Um,
Right.
but I there's but the problem is you're relying on the people that are so benefiting from this broken system to police it and reform it that it's just not. I mean, I can't see it happening.
Right. And the idea that, there is such a thing as an altruistic elected official, very few.
Yeah,
I will
and they
say
have no
maybe
power.
maybe 1%, exactly, and they have no power because they're not towing the line and voting along with their mainstream parties. You know what? We can complain about the squad all we want, but those guys, they don't vote with their party,
Yeah,
right? They vote for what they think is right.
I respect them for the chances that they take and the stands that they take. I don't respect.
Right. Their views are crazy,
Yeah,
crazy,
their views are crap.
crazy pants.
Like I always say about the Bernie Bros. Like in fact, I agree with you on the problems that you're looking at. The problems that you're looking at are absolutely the problems we need to solve. Your solutions suck, but I respect you for actually identifying the problem correctly. Let's talk about how we can make a better solution.
Exactly.
Um, quick shout out to Elizabeth Coquillard for watching with us. I really appreciate you joining in tonight. Um, and thanks for Robert Bischoff. Really appreciate that. Um, Let's see. The next story, Kristen Sinema. Well, we'll stay with Congress. Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin continue to fight for the filibuster and has scuttled the Voting Rights Act, the John Lewis
Yeah.
Voting Rights Act as well. Um,
I'm glad they did. I think
yeah,
it's very interesting that both of them have last names that are nouns. There's something to it, either a cinema or a mansion
yeah,
that I like to go. Um, but I mean, the filibuster is the way government always should have been. Like, if not that the founding fathers did a lot of things wrong, but if they'd been really forward thinking, they would have said, you know what, 2/3 should be the margin for passing everything
yeah,
instead of just for president veto. Now, the one interesting thing about it is that I do think we could potentially elect an independent president. I
I
mean, it
think
would be hard, but I think it's possible. And I love the idea of a libertarian presidential candidate running on the idea that they're going to veto everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say. I mean, if I for all right, I'm not running in 2024, but let's just say Fishman
It's for
2028.
campaign expenses now.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just say Fishman 2028.
Yeah.
Um, I would run on the idea that I am going to veto every bill that comes in front of me, no matter what. So, Congress, don't send me anything that doesn't have 2/3 support because it's just a waste of your time. And, if that's what they want to do and they want to keep sending me stuff, it's fine. But I'm going to veto everything. Make them do it because that really does make us understand that it's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Get
Yes.
everybody involved. It's not supposed to be a government of 51% of the people.
Or 51% of 100 people, 51% of 300 or
35.
435
Yep.
people. It should, and that's really what some of these laws are coming down to, is that we're so broken and partisan at this point that we're trying to stuff something through on a 51 because the vice president has to break the tie, and then 218 in the House to be
Yep.
able to get something passed. The Affordable Care Act was a prime example of that, in that it passed by with just bare minimum majorities in each house.
And they
um,
kind of pulled some shenanigans to use
yeah,
reconciliation so they didn't have to go through the filibuster.
exactly.
Yeah.
um, so the filibuster, yes, I am so happy that they fought to keep it. One of the things I always tell my Democratic friends, because they're so frustrated with what's going on in Washington right now, thinking we won the election, we should be able to. It shouldn't work that way. One, two, the filibuster, I- just lengthen your vision a little bit beyond what
Right.
will happen today. If you get rid of the filibuster, oh yes, okay, we'll get the Voting Rights Act, which is great. There are some things in the Voting Rights Act I like, and there's some things that I'm very concerned about. But in less than a year, we're going to have an election where it's going to be very, very likely
Yeah.
that the other party is going to come in, and then in 2 years, I mean, if you look at Joe Biden's polling numbers at this point, and I know it's crazy to look at him this far out,
No,
but
but I mean, honestly, if there were a place to go bet on this, I would bet a lot of money that Joe Biden will not run in 2024. Like,
yeah,
have you seen him recently on the air?
oh
He
yeah.
looks terrible.
He does, and I'm sure it's a lot of it is stress, and I'm sure that a lot of it is his age catching up with him.
Right.
Um, and love him or hate him, and I pretty much hate him, but Donald Trump is allowed to kind of rest right now and kind of get his energy up for a vigorous campaign, and um, yeah, I don't think that Biden's going to run, but seriously, in 2 years and 9 months, you could have a Republican president, Republican House, Republican Senate, with decent majorities, and they could reverse everything that you're going to do, and
Yeah.
they don't have to. They won't have to listen to the filibuster. Yeah, I mean, I always tell people that we often create the cudgel with which we're eventually beaten, and that is going to be one that's going to be used against the Democrat, just like the nuclear option was against the Democrats for all those Supreme Court seats during Trump's term.
Yeah. Actually, Dr. Jorgensen had a post talking about the presidential debates and how uh, we're going to talk about that later.
Yeah.
But one of the things that somebody wrote in there is people should recognize that whenever they create a system that allows them to oppress somebody, it will eventually be used against them. And,
Yes.
and that's where it is. If we repeal the filibuster, it's eventually not going to be there to save you.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of these things that they've done over the last few years, these protections that we've kind of built into the system, and then they rip off for expediency's sake. You're going to eventually need them. That's the short sighted thing that people don't realize, is that eventually you're going to need that. Eventually, it's going to be very useful to you to stop something. Like, I think one of the big problems I had with the voting rights legislation is that instead of making this a 50-state slog for the Republicans to abrogate voting rights, they're gonna put it all in the hands of the federal government, and then it's gonna be only one vote that can abrogate those rights and make it harder for people to vote. Um, I think that's the benefit of the 50-state system, the federal system that we have, is that if they want to screw with voting rights, they have to do it state by state. It's a tough slog to do it.
Well, the thing is it's again, it's one of those things that they want this issue to fight about because we could solve voting rights like right away. Like as far as I'm concerned, simple things that if we want to have, it's not unreasonable to say that only registered people should be able to vote. Okay, you have to be registered so that we know that you actually are allowed to vote.
Yeah,
So the question becomes, how do we identify people? Nowadays, with cell phones, everybody has the ability to send a picture of themselves with a text message. That's it. That's all you need for your ID. So you
yeah,
send that before you vote. And then when you show up to vote, we'll have your picture there. We can call it up and say, look, that's you. Good enough.
yeah,
And then we let everybody vote. But there's a photo ID. Nobody had to pay anything for it. Easy cheesy. So we could solve it immediately. And I'm not a genius for having thought of this. Lots of people have thought about this. In reality, they want the issue. They want to be able to fight over voting rights so that they can say, oh, the Republicans are doing these terrible things, because Democrats want to have that issue. And Republicans are like, oh, Democrats are cheating because they want to have that issue. It's
yeah.
one more thing where they want to really rally on something up when they could have a solution that would work immediately.
Yeah. I mean, in here in West Virginia, one of the things that people don't realize is that West Virginia is very innovative when it comes to voting. We have blockchain voting. We allow people to vote online. Our
Wow.
overseas military personnel are allowed to vote online, and disabled people are allowed to vote online. Um,
Mhm.
so, as much as they push this idea of stop the steal, like no,
Right.
there's ways to do it. Blockchain, I think, is going to be a important feature access to our future feature of voting, as much as I hate to think of the idea of a national ID, but your idea of picture
Yeah.
confirmation is reasonable.
Yeah. And reasonable, easy to implement, and free for all intents and purposes.
Yeah,
Because I mean, as it is, they print out at each voting place. I mean, so the other thing is that the technology is there too. That let's just say that somebody didn't understand it and they show up to vote in person. Fine, let's have just a photo booth and they come and get their picture taken right then, and we let them provisionally vote. But now we've got their photo as well,
yeah.
so everybody gets to vote. And the thing is that
I get why there might be some reticence towards that, based on the old uh, Jim Crow systems where they would take pictures of people voting. That's why for a long time taking pictures of a photo in a voting booth has been illegal. It's part of the old Jim Crow. You were seen at the voting booth. Who did you vote for? Or you're a black person at the voting booth. Let's beat the hell out of this person. That type of thing. I get the reticence towards it, but there really isn't a
yeah, more than that, I would make the argument and say, you know what, we have to have the courage to step forward and vote.
yeah,
And let's prosecute the bad people who are trying to intimidate you, or even more likely nowadays, buy your votes, saying, "Hey, I'll give you $1,000 or if you're $100, et cetera, if you go down and vote for this thing. I want you to vote for Valente, but as long as you go to the voting booth, I'll pay you $100,
I'll
or
take a
whatever."
buck at this point.
No, it's the exactly, but
Yeah,
that sort of thing is it's It's a solution. You know what? Once we get that implemented, then we get past the stupid idea that it's unreasonable to ask people to be identified when they vote, because that's not an unreasonable thing. And
no,
in fact, most Democrats will tell you they don't mind the idea of requiring an ID to vote. They object to the barrier to entry, the cost, the availability, etc., to be able to get an ID.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't be an issue in today's modern era.
No, it
So,
should be. No.
yeah, so I say that we implement that. If we make a company that does that, you and me will make millions
I
because
would hope
nothing's better than billing the government.
so. They're slow to pay though, man.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's I I would hope that they come to some sort of compromise in Congress on this legislation and kind of like we've been talking about. There's the Democrats have really just wanted to stack everything in it, get as much as they possibly can out of this legislation that would advantage them.
Yeah.
Pull out some of that advantage stuff and just pass some legislation that makes some damn sense.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
would, it's a novel idea, but
Well, and also pass one thing at a time. That's
yeah,
the other thing that's crazy about it. You know what? There are some good things in the Voting Rights Act and the Voting Rights Bill. I don't object to early voting. Fuck, why don't we
yeah,
have early voting? I mean, look, I understand, and it's fascinating to see. I don't know if you saw this. One of the things that the RNC complained about in with the CPD is that the first debate didn't happen until after 7 states had already started early voting.
yeah.
Which, yeah, you know what? They're right. They should have the debates earlier. But also, I mean, it's true that early voting makes it difficult to have campaigns like we've always had, where people do things at the end.
Oh yeah,
However, tough. Early
yeah.
voting is not thwarting the will of the people.
It's interesting that we've gone from the idea of election day and our elections largely being decided that evening, like we
Right.
know what the winner is that evening. Now we have election season, like it's just it's a month and a half in many places, and I don't have an objection to that. I think that's a good thing that we've extended voting times and extended the voting period. It does prevent things like October surprises and all this
More than that, I,
tomfoolery.
I think that they should display the running totals so that you know where it is. Right now, I mean, most people assume that Democrats are predominantly early voters.
Sure.
But one of the things about it is that they don't let them tally the votes until the day of the election. And so it takes even longer to do all that stuff. Tally the early votes when they come in. Keep a running thing. Oh, right now, so and so is leading by such and such. Let the states know let the candidates know where they should be making pushes,
Yeah,
things like that. I mean, what too much information is not such a thing. There's not such a thing as too much information. They say, oh, it's going to bias people. I mean, who cares? It's actual fact.
yeah.
Facts aren't biasing people.
I mean, I do understand the worry that it might suppress voter turnout as you go later in the. If, let's say somebody gives up several million votes,
Yep.
um, that might depress members of that other party that are not wanting to make the effort in a losing cause.
Sure. On the other hand, I like the idea that, we might look at it and say, you know what? Democrats already have 50% of the vote and there's 3 weeks left. Everybody should vote for the Libertarian.
Yeah,
Vote your conscience. There's no point in voting for Donald Trump at that point in time. So vote for Joe Jorgensen,
sure. Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
When
Uh,
I am emperor, that's what we're going to do.
Supreme Galactic Overlord. Let's talk. So the GOP, we talked about this a second ago. GOP has sent a letter to the heads of the Commission on Presidential Debates,
Yeah.
those bastards, indicating that RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel will advise the GOP nominee to skip the presidential debates if there aren't major significant changes. Basically, I think they just want the ability to interrupt no matter how often they do it during the debates. I think is their big thing.
One of the fascinating things, though, and I thought that this was a legitimate point, is that for the first debate, they had these big plexiglass boxes set up that the candidates were supposed to stand in.
Yeah.
And when Trump got on stage, he's like, has anybody tried this with the lights turned on yet? Sure enough, they turned the lights and you couldn't see anybody anymore. And so,
Oh,
the RNC wrote, he's like, you guys are a bunch of, they didn't say asshats, but I'll say asshat.
yeah.
Because, you don't know what you're doing. There's something to that. I mean, the CPD is obviously it's terrible in so many millions of ways.
Yes.
Not the least of which is, that they are deliberately set up to keep anybody except for Republican and Democrat out. And they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but they're actually bipartisan. And
Yeah.
that's not the same thing. And so just for, I see we've got about 47,000 people watching right now. For those of you who aren't familiar with this part of the story, when the Commission for Presidential Debates came over, they took over and they said, okay, we're only going to allow third-party candidates in if they're polling at 5%. And then, of course, Ross Perot comes along and he's polling at 7%. You got your truck and it's stuck in a ditch. The American economy is like a truck.
Look at this chart.
And so he ends up getting 19% of the vote because they let him in the debate. So then they said, okay, we're going to change it to be 15% of the polling. And we're going to change the debate question over should this person be in the debate to if the election were today, who would you vote for president? Which means that everybody who says, I don't know, I'm waiting for the debates to make up my mind, counts against
Yep.
a candidate getting to 15%. And in the history of modern polling, neither Republican nor Democrat has ever polled below 40%. So let's just say they have the worst two candidates ever. And that's been apparent for at least the last three elections.
Yeah.
They're polling 40% each. So that's 80%. So now, in order for somebody to get 15%, it's only 20% of the electorate that's out there that's possible. And let's say you have a legitimate fourth candidate like Jill Stein, it becomes almost impossible to get 15% because all those people who are actually considerate are going to say, I'm waiting to watch the debates. I'm
Yeah.
undecided.
Well, and not only that, but they also don't even ask about the candidates. They'll say if the election's held today,
Well,
will you vote for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden? That's the only options you get. You have to actually indicate.
Well, exactly. In fact, it used to be in 2016 that they, because in 2016 when Gary Johnson was running, they said, "Are you more likely to vote for Trump the Republican, uh, Clinton the Democrat, or Johnson the Libertarian?" When Gary Johnson was included in the polls,
Yeah.
but Gary Johnson got to 13%, which considering the math is pretty friggin' amazing.
Yes.
And Quinnipiac did a poll, and they said they did the original question of should this person be allowed to be in the presidential debate, and 67% of the population said Gary Johnson should be in the presidential debate. So, excuse me, we should. But so then, because Gary Johnson got 13%, that was too close, and so CPD changed the question again to be exactly what you said, and they stopped listing the names, and they just said, if the election were today, who would you vote for? Donald Trump or Joe Biden?
Yes.
And so the only way Joe Jorgensen could even get anything was to be mentioned. And so the fact that she was polling at 1% is again astonishing. But
Yeah.
I'm glad the Republicans are where we are and realize that the CPD is completely fakakta. What should happen is there's an amazing group of people out there called the Committee for American Debate. I'm going to put the website up on your page, or you can put it up because I can't type it there. It is www.americandebatecommittee.com. And they are an independent organization dedicated to making sure that there is an independent debate. And in fact, in 2020, they offered to they put together a debate in at the Pritzker Military Museum and Library in Chicago, and they invited Joe Jorgensen and Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And it was going to be called the Veterans Debate. This debate is to honor veterans.
Yeah.
Great, right? Why not? Why not have a debate with, representing some of the people who have really laid down their lives for our country? And what happened? The CPD pointed out to the Trump and Biden campaign that they'd actually signed a contract that said that they would not participate in any presidential debates that weren't run by the Commission on Presidential Debates.
Yeah.
So hopefully, what's going to happen is that the Committee for American Debate, and I don't know anything about this per se, but what I've heard is that they are going to work on, there are 4 states that have gubernatorial elections this year, 4 big populous states: Florida, New York, I think California, and maybe Illinois. I don't know. But they are going to have these debates, and the Committee for American Debates should run those, because right now the local state debates aren't run by any organization.
No, generally they're, I mean, like here in West Virginia, our gubernatorial debates are run by the West Virginia Broadcasters Association. Um, and they shut out our candidate. Um, generally I think we kind of believe that idea that if you're on the ballot, you should be included in the debate. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, that we've made the point over the last few years that, if you are uh, if you're on enough ballots to be conceivably win the election. So we were on all 50 state ballots.
Right.
The Green Party were on 30 some odd ballots, still
Right.
enough to get to that 270 threshold. All 4 parties should have been included in the debates.
Right. So a Committee for American Debate actually has as their criteria on all 50 states in DC, which, that is a thing.
Yeah.
But it is, it's a fascinating question in terms of what should be the criteria. Is it enough to get to 270? Is it all 50 states? I don't really care, as long as it's not the Commission on Presidential Debates running it.
Yes.
Personally, I do think that all 50 states is a reasonable thing, but I recognize also the difficulty of it, right? In the history of the United States, only 3 parties have ever had 50 state ballot access in 2 consecutive presidential elections.
Yeah.
Only Republicans and Democrats and Libertarians. The Greens have never had 50 state presidential ballot access.
Yep.
Reform Party did it once.
Yeah.
And the Dixiecrats, who actually, of course, are the most successful third party, they didn't bother to run anybody in Massachusetts.
No. But yeah, I mean, that it makes sense. I mean, like they were so focused on keeping the former Democratic vote in the South together that yeah, there wasn't really much of a drive to get Northern sympathizer votes.
Right. One of the really fascinating issues around that is that a lot of people aren't aware of actually the debt that the political people owe to the Nixon campaign. Because in 68, if you were to look at an electoral map, you would see that the Dixiecrats had a lot of votes. It could very easily have gone to a scenario where the House of Representatives would have elected the president.
Yeah.
And that would have been pretty complicated. However, in the long run, that's what we'd like to see. Is we'd like to see lots of candidates running, and yeah, nobody get to 270. That's actually because of the way the system is broken right now. The states in 270 and electoral vote college, and I prefer the electoral college over a popular vote electing everybody, but with a first past the post or completely throw everything out and go to the House of Representatives, that becomes a really crazy scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the electoral college reform I would like to see is what they do in Maine and Nebraska, which is popular vote wins the
Yeah.
two seats allocated for the senators, and then the congressional seats are each, whoever wins those congressional seats, then those are electors allocated to the winner of those seats. Um, I also would like to see just a ton more congressional seats created, because I think 435 is just artificially low number of
Well,
Congress people.
they changed that in it was 1900, 1912 or something. Prior to that, it had been one represent. It's actually written in the
Yeah,
Constitution. One representative for every 30,000 people.
yeah.
And I wish that they were still doing that because you'd
Yeah.
have much more representative democracy. And
I mean,
go
yeah,
ahead.
it would be like, well, I did it one time based off of how Britain does it, which is like, I think 60,000 in their district. So it would be roughly double. So about 6,000 representatives in Washington. And yeah, is that a cumbersome mess? But I think that's a feature rather than a flaw in the system, to have so many people there to discuss the issues of the day. Plus,
Right.
you wouldn't have this fealty to two parties, just because. I mean, I think wherever you have politics happen, you do have people conglomerating around two major parties, but you will have many more voices in the room, rather
Right.
than people subservient to, oh, he's a Trumper, or oh, they're a
Right.
establishment Democrat.
Well, it is an interesting thing too. People don't talk a lot about the 17th Amendment, which changed the way that senators are elected. Because it used to be that senators were elected by the state house,
Yes.
and it was meant to be representing the state. Now they're elected by popular election, which is different, and it decreases the power of the state. You see populists getting elected instead of people who have the support of
The state election.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, as somebody who we have no elected libertarians in the House anywhere, uh, I guess I've got a better chance of getting a libertarian senator elected because it goes to the popular vote. But I recognize the imbalance that it makes, that the Senate was supposed to be much more about state power than it was
Yeah.
supposed to be about populism. And so, as an example, in West Virginia, if the state house were selecting senators, Joe Manchin wouldn't be a senator from West Virginia.
No. No, it would probably be Patrick Morrissey, the Attorney General, which would be a
The guy
big.
from the Smiths,
No,
oh,
not the. Yeah, it
different
would be.
Morrissey,
Yeah, he's one of the stop the stealer guys. So,
right?
he's the one. Funny thing about Patrick Morrissey, like, I went to the state capitol a couple years ago, right before COVID shut everything down,
Right.
and Patrick Morrissey ran for Senate against Manchin in 2018 and lost to him narrowly. And Rusty Holland, who's a great guy, he's actually a oil worker up in. He spends part of his year in Alaska now, up in the very tip top of Alaska. Um, he ran against him and was the margin between Manchin and Morrissey. So Manchin pulls me aside at the state house and he's like, "Are you guys going to run anybody for attorney general this time? Because, or you guys sure cost me that election."
Yeah, it's
Yes,
funny.
thank you.
It's funny that they know us for that sort of thing.
Yeah,
We, yeah, I have that thing in Massachusetts where, like, all the Republicans now are like, "You should run with us, but please don't run against us."
yeah,
It is
yeah.
what it is.
We got a comment about libertarians and third parties running focusing on local elections. We're actually doing pretty well at local levels, especially in Pennsylvania. We've actually, in West Virginia, we've elected three city council members. We do run quite a few candidates at the local level, and we'd love to focus on the local level. The problem is, for us to get ballot access, a lot of the time, uh, we are focused on, or have to focus on, things like here in West Virginia. We have to focus on the gubernatorial race. You have to get 1% of the vote in the gubernatorial race, or you lose ballot access, which means you have to do petitioning and get
Right.
several thousand signatures. It's a pain in the ass. So we have to dedicate so much of our time, money, and energy into ensuring that we continue to maintain ballot access rather than working and getting elected to those local offices. I would love for us just to have ballot access and really build that party
Yeah.
grassroots up.
Yeah, I
Build
mean, I think I want to say there's something like 500 elected libertarians across the country in smaller nonpartisan races.
Mhm.
A lot, and like as David said, a large chunk of them are in Pennsylvania
Yep.
because of a peculiarity in the way Pennsylvania runs its electoral system. Uh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Happy to take advantage of it. But it is true. So Massachusetts is a good example. Uh, if we want to have 50 state ballot access to run for president in Massachusetts, it means that we have to get 3% in one of the statewide races, either auditor, secretary of state, or treasurer. And as a result, or attorney general, or governor, or lieutenant governor, but those are obviously much bigger races. As a result, though, the uh, the state parties have to put a lot of effort into getting that done, because otherwise, ballot access right now for midterms in Massachusetts, signatures the cheap signature people are going at $5 a signature,
Yeah.
and it takes 25,000 signatures to get a presidential candidate on the ballot in Massachusetts. And so, if you figure that, let's just say you're going to have a validity rate of 80%. Uh, that's $170,000 to get a presidential candidate on the ballot.
Yeah.
So that becomes no brainer for the Libertarian Party. They're like, hell, we can just run somebody for auditor and have that person get 3% of the vote, and then you automatically get ballot access. And to run a candidate for auditor only costs about $18,000.
Yeah.
So for 1/10 of the price, you can get your presidential candidate on the ballot automatically.
And nothing burns out the rank and file quite like a ballot petition drive.
Yep.
If you want to do it the freeway, which is take all the volunteers in the state and stick them on a ballot petition drive. It
I've
especially a lot
I
of
have
these
never
places.
seen it work in a state with a big requirement.
Yeah. You're sitting in the middle of Virginia in the summer trying to get ballot access petitions. You're hot, you're sweaty. The person you're trying to get petitions from is hot and sweaty. It's not a fun slog to get through.
In
But
Massachusetts, where it's mostly a one-party state, but even the Republicans can't get ballot access without paid signature gatherers.
yeah,
Their party isn't strong enough. Only the Democrats are strong enough in Massachusetts.
yeah,
Now they've set up the system of government so that it's easy for them to gather people. They essentially can hand out sheets at their town meetings. There's 380 towns in Massachusetts, cities, towns, whatever, and they're required to have town meetings, and they just bring their signature sheet. Each party is required to have a town meeting. They bring the signature
yeah.
sheet, have people sign them. There you go, you got it. But the
Much
Republicans don't have
easier.
enough people to even have town meetings in all the towns, so
Yeah,
they struggle.
yeah. I mean, we could probably do a whole hour and a half on the struggles of just getting ballot access
Right.
in many of the states.
Yep.
We're lucky here in West Virginia that we've got it because we've had really good gubernatorial candidates. Last time we had a fantastic one in Erica Kalinich. Uh,
Amazing candidate.
she was. I hope she runs again. I actually hope she runs locally because I think she can get elected in her town of Buchanan.
That would be cool.
Um, but also need to get a gubernatorial candidate for 2024. So to do it again. But I think in West Virginia we've gotten almost to a base. Like our local candidates, at least 5% in each election. Well, like I said, we've gotten candidates elected to town councils now. Um, you're starting to see a base move up. We've got about 1% of the statewide registered voters. So
Right.
um, good things are happening. So we just need to keep the momentum going. All right, let's talk about Tonga. So what was it, Friday?
Volcano.
Yeah, Friday afternoon, volcano underwater north of the main island of Tonga erupted and caused a massive tsunami. Uh, two stats about this: it caused a 7.6 register on the Richter scale, which is devastating enough. Uh, the sound of it was heard 5,000 miles away, and there were tsunamis over 5,000 miles away, including the port of Santa Cruz in California, is shut
I saw
down
that
right
one.
now because the water came ashore there.
Yep. It's pretty impressive. Did you see the satellite footage?
Yeah. Oh
It's
my
pretty
goodness.
amazing. That was, I mean, Earth is pretty amazing. And now, one of course, the really interesting things about that is the uh, the greenhouse gases that released, et cetera. Just slightly underneath Indonesia. So almost, an enormous amount.
Yeah.
There's been more greenhouse release from that volcano than from a lot of other things. And so I'm not saying don't be concerned about climate change. I'm saying sometimes it's not all in our hands.
True.
And for people who don't know, look up Snowball Earth. At one point in time, the Earth was frozen, completely covered in a layer of ice, and there was a whole bunch of volcanoes that erupted and caused global warming that melted the planet again.
Yes.
So sometimes global warming is good. I say, as it's most of the East Coast is in this unbelievable freeze right now. What's your snow like outside, man?
It's not bad. Well, I'm concerned because it has switched over to ice.
Interesting. Well, we
So
actually have hail outside right now. I can hear it.
it's probably sleet.
Yeah, it's loud. It's like thump, 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 thump.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we got sleet here right now, and it's you hear it tinkling against the glass. So um, it we got about I think it got about 3 inches, but I think the rain and sleet have kind of tampered it down.
Yeah,
Um,
I just listened. It's gone away mostly.
there you go. It uh, it's supposed to start snowing a little bit later this evening, so I don't know how much we're going to get off of that.
Oh wait,
But
you
again,
haven't
I'm
had any snow yet?
no, we had about 3 inches,
Okay,
and then the rain, rain
gotcha.
and
As it
sleet
gets
started.
colder, then it's going to snow again.
So yeah, hopefully, hopefully it's not too much of a mess tomorrow. I'm
But you're
definitely
not
paying.
driving in anyway, right?
I'm Ted. Well, it's a holiday tomorrow for
It
us.
is a federal holiday.
Yeah,
Oh, well, and that gives me something to plug later on.
there you go. Um, but I, I gotta shovel the driveway. Well, actually, I'm gonna pay a kid to shovel the driveway because I'm lazy and I got money. So
Makes sense. You should do that.
yeah,
Although
stimulating the
it's
economy.
funny, I did bring my snowblower down from Massachusetts, and I completely don't need it here. So you probably get a lot of snow, and you have a driveway.
Well, I mean, it's not that big of a driveway. It's probably 20 feet long. I mean, it's
All right.
uh, a tiny one, but yeah, I mean, we've gotten quite a bit of snow. Like last year, we probably for a couple months there, it was like every weekend we were getting some kind of snow. So um, I was saying earlier that we have to watch out because with the ice, that's when we start seeing power outages, trees falling across power lines, and all that fun stuff. Like my neighborhood, all of our power stuff is below ground.
Yep.
Um, which is, absolutely smart, but the big trunk lines that go off into the distance are, of course, above ground. So
Right.
we're at the mercy of those things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously we had that big storm. I guess it's 2 weeks ago now, but we were in the jackpot and incredible damage. We were out without power for over 2 days, which was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. That was interesting. We actually got we didn't even get anything from that storm.
Right.
It completely just, Winchester got a little bit, but everything south of us got hit and everything north of us was completely dry.
Yep.
But, yeah, that was interesting to see because, like, I have friends that are in Frederick that were snowed in, and you go 20 miles towards Hagerstown, there was nothing.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny how the line works like that. I mean, because it's weird where I live, the nearest town to us is Waldorf, and we hardly get any attention from the local news coverage or anything like that.
Yeah,
But for this storm, they're like, Waldorf is the jackpot. 13 inches of snow in Waldorf. And it was amazing too, because it was like a really wet, sticky snow. And
yeah,
so, like, I mean, it took over so many trees. It was astonishing. Like, just, bent them over and then cracked them. Uh, but then a lot of them, like, especially the hollies, like, I found I could go around, I could shake all the snow off and they would spring back up. But crazy stuff, crazy storm.
yeah. It was, and this one's interesting. It was predicted to be a much more of a monster than it's been. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I think the warm air coming from the south has really kind of tampered some of this stuff down, but
Yep.
it's winter, and who knows what we'll be seeing. I check my weather app quite frequently, and like at points today it was telling me it was going to snow like Wednesday, and then it was going to snow Saturday, and then now there's no snow in the forecast. So who knows what's going to happen? But getting back to Tonga, I'm worried because we haven't been able to establish much contact with the country because it's internet's down there, all that stuff. Getting relief supplies. It didn't seem like there was they were able to get people to higher ground to avoid the worst of the tsunamis. I'm sure there's lots of devastation as far as homes and businesses that have been destroyed by the because just remembering the Indonesia tsunami what 20 years ago
Yeah, yeah.
almost. How devastating that is, that just that wall of water, and it starts picking up debris and it just becomes that much worse.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
and the fact that went all the way to, it hit Alaska, it hit the west coast of the United States, closing the port of Santa Cruz, which is not a help to us because we need all the ports open that we can get at this point to get goods and services sent into the United States.
Right. And it's interesting that they can't get anything to Tonga because of all the ash in the air. No
Yeah.
planes can fly in the vicinity. And
No,
so
you're gonna have to ship
everybody
it in.
has to get there by boat, which is complicated. But
Yeah.
I gather that New Zealand is already planning on going, and it's going to be an interesting study in rescue efforts because we really don't know how bad things are there. But it's interesting because there are all these stories about like people hearing really bad disasters a long ways away,
Yeah.
and so I have to tell my favorite one, which is of course about the Boston Bruins,
Oh boy.
which is in 1917, an ammunition ship was
Oh
sailing
yeah.
into Halifax in Nova Scotia,
Yep.
and it collided with a fertilizer ship. Collided. Somebody was drunk. Canadians, whatever. But it set off this astonishing explosion that
Yeah.
really laid waste to Halifax, and it was heard in Boston. And the people of Boston, they're like, "What the fuck was that?" And they had no idea what it was. We're like, "That's so loud, it's really bad." And so Massachusetts General Hospital organized like this relief convoy of like 6 trucks, and they started driving northeast. And they kept stopping along the way, like, "Did you guys hear that thing? Yeah, it was that way." And they kept going that way until
Wow.
finally they end up at Halifax, and they're like, "Oh, thank goodness we brought doctors and bandages
Yeah.
and all sorts of stuff." And ever since then, uh, people in Nova Scotia root for the Bruins instead of the Canadiens, and they send the Christmas tree that Boston puts up every year. It's this giant Nova Scotia pine. It's amazing. And it's just one of those
Nice.
touching little stories. Krakatoa
Oh
was
yeah.
heard, thousands of miles away. And for people who aren't familiar with it, that's the largest volcano ever in Indonesia, largest that we know of. And it put so much ash into the air that the next year was known as the year without a summer.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely cooled down the planet, and it caused like a not quite a mini ice age, but for a couple of years, it was definitely a struggle for crops and things like that. So
Yeah,
um, let's see. Next story: a gunman broke into a Texas synagogue yesterday in the DFW Metroplex, just
crazy.
outside of Fort Worth. Took 4 people hostages. The hostages were rescued, and the gunman was shot dead by the FBI. According to the story I was looking at, his name was he was a British national named Malik Faisal Akram,
Yeah,
um, and he was seeking the release of a Doctor Afia Siddiqui, and she was a U.S. trained Pakistani neuroscientist. They captured her in Afghanistan like 2007. She was convicted in 2008 and is currently serving time in Texas. Um, just a really weird story. I mean, yeah, she's kind of a cause celeb in Pakistani circles. She maintains her innocence. Um,
yeah.
you know, I don't know. I have a problem with us keeping a Pakistani national that was captured in Afghanistan in American prison, especially
Ye-
after the conflict is over.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that somewhat. I mean, they classified her as a combatant, and so that's the rationale that she's involved in this war, and that's why they kept her there.
Yeah.
But
Um, but now, I mean, now that we've left Afghanistan, what is the justification for keeping her?
yeah,
Combat operations in Afghanistan are over. Uh, Generally, after a war is done, they repatriate prisoners of war and all that. Um,
right. Usually, right. You would have some sort of prisoner exchange or things like that. I mean, again, it's sort of a tough thing because the argument is, who are the criminals that, is 9/11 an act of war? Were the people criminals? Were they soldiers, etc.? And
sure.
so, eh, I sure look, I agree. Uh, we shouldn't be holding people indefinitely, no matter what, in
Yeah.
Guantanamo. However, a synagogue. I mean,
Yeah.
just some
I mean,
people in Dallas. So, for those of you who aren't aware, uh, a lot of Jewish congregations will generally, when we gather, hire a police officer to be outside. It's not that long ago. Tree of Life in Pittsburgh,
yep.
right? Over 100 people killed. Um, here, other examples of things like that. This is a very deliberate political act,
Yep.
and it is what it is. It's not. I'm glad that everything worked out as well as it did, but it's very. It's meant to be divisive. It's not meant to be. It's not really about the prisoner because if it were really about the prisoner, right? You would do something else. You would attack the United States government.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah. I
instead,
mean, he wanted to make a point, wanted to be famous, I guess, raise attention on the issue. Um, Yeah, in fact, throughout the United States today, lots of police were present at local temples, and it's a little late for that situation, but where we yes, we do still live in a dangerous world. I think that in this case, the fact that we're still holding on to a person that's a combatant from a war that we're no longer prosecuting is a little extreme.
yeah.
Um, but his choice to attack a synagogue is certainly awful, and should yeah. I'm not glad that he got killed, but
It
um,
yeah, it's an interesting thing. Texas had a similar case not that long ago where a congregant, and it wasn't a Jewish synagogue, it was a
oh yeah,
church, but armed congregant killed somebody. And, it does seem to me that that makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Having taking your own safety into your own hands because the police are only ever just minutes away.
Yeah, and that's not good when you have seconds. So
Yep.
yeah, of course, we're all big Second Amendment supporters, and the right to defend yourself should not be abridged. So,
Yep.
um, finally, tonight, last news story of the night. Recent study from the University of Nebraska indicates that politics is actually making us sick. The key findings in the study are that 4 in 10 list politics as their top stressor,
Yeah.
and that makes sense. It causes them to lose sleep and fracture relationships, which I'm sure everybody has had an issue where a relationship, family member, whatever, that you just can't talk to anymore because of what politics has become in this country. Um, and one of the shocking statistics is that 1 in 20 indicated discussing politics makes them feel suicidal.
Yeah. I mean, because the problem is that, we're so split on these issues that, I mean, I mean, you and I can both attest to it, right? I mean, you had a health incident
Yeah,
after, serving on the LNC for a while.
yeah,
Uh, I can tell you that, I mean, if you spend more than 15 minutes with me, it's pretty obvious. I never get really depressed about anything, but I was pretty upset when I was working for the LNC. It was terrible because, people say all sorts of terrible things about you.
yeah.
And it's sort of the nature of the beast. And so, it's interesting. There is a woman who's a good friend of ours who announced yesterday that she's leaving the LP because of, all sorts of just really terrible things said about her.
Yeah.
And I spoke to her this morning and she's like, I'm not leaving the Liberty Movement. But, the party has gotten to the place that people think that it's worth attacking the successful people in the party. She's like, I never had so much uh, praise about the stuff that I'd done sent to me until I said that I was quitting the party. Prior to that, all I ever heard from was the haters. Oh, we hate you, blah, 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 blah. And I had the same thing. Uh, my last 6 months of working for the LNC, a couple people would say, "Oh, you did a great job at the convention," or anything like that. But most of it was like, you're ruining the party. You're working for the communists. Blah 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 blah
Yeah,
blah.
you're
All that
CIA.
stuff. Yeah, and then when you leave, it's like this weight is lifted off of your shoulder.
Yes.
And the thing about it is that I have come to the conclusion that the way to win this is that liberty shouldn't be political. And if I can find a way to talk about liberty in a way that's not, has nothing to do with our political structure, then maybe we can actually win that part of it. And, because liberty isn't really about politics, it's about having enough respect for your fellow human being that you let them do, excuse me, what they want. And finding that way of communicating that with, you know, libertarianism is the political expression of loving your neighbor because, libertarians don't support Second Amendment rights just for us to have guns. We want everybody to have guns. And we're saying that we love you enough, we trust you enough that we think that you have a right to bear arms. Because if we
Or
did,
not or not to have guns, not to be forced to have guns. Like people will in the Second Amendment movement always bring up Kennesaw, Georgia, which passed that law say that everyone has, all homeowners should have a or have to have a gun.
right,
It's not an enforced law, but I think that's just as stupid as the gun control laws that we see on the books.
yeah,
It should be your choice.
yeah, I agree.
I believe in cannabis recreation. I believe in actually, legalizing all narcotics because not because I want to go out and do them. Although if I, find out I got terminal illness, I'm probably going to go do some meth or something just for funsies.
Oh no,
But
heroin, dude.
heroin, meth, I don't care.
Yeah, I mean that.
Doing it all. Doing it all. If I find out I've got a rapidly coming expiration date,
Yeah.
we're gonna go
Oh,
have
well,
fun.
I mean, I mean, so I have certainly, full disclosure, I have smoked heroin, but that's not the strongest high you can get from it. Injecting heroin is the way to go.
Yeah.
And supposedly, the first time you inject heroin is the best feeling you'll ever have in your life.
Hmm.
Eh, like everybody says that. Everybody who has actually done it, they're like, yeah, nothing else ever feels that good.
And then
Yeah,
the addiction comes from trying to chase that high again.
exactly. And that's exactly it. And
Yeah.
so, I have no desire to do that because I don't want to have to say to myself, oh, yeah, I really want to have that again or try to moderate something like that. I recognize that there are people who have successfully done it, but I just don't want that.
Yeah.
But if I had a terminal disease, well, yeah, then I'm going to want to see what that's like.
We're gonna rock out, man.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Because, I mean, you can definitely take enough heroin that it will kill you. So
Yeah.
why not do that?
Yeah. I mean, that is if
It's in fact
you're
when
looking
they
at
have
euthanasia, then that might be a way to do it.
well, the other day, it wasn't that long ago, right, where they were having this problem executing people in prisons, which I wish they wouldn't execute people in prisons,
Yes.
but they said that they couldn't get the drugs. I'm like, I know where you can get them.
You just
They're
go
in
down
the
to the
prison already.
you go to the 7-Eleven and King Street and,
Yeah.
Winchester Avenue in Martinsburg, you'll be able to get enough drugs to put down an elephant at this point, so
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, right, phenobarbital, all that others, or not phenobarbital, what's that? Fentanyl? Right,
fentanyl, yeah,
that's the really crazy killing one.
yeah.
There are all these other things that's what they should be doing instead of, these other drugs. What are they afraid that these guys are gonna get high before they die on the death
Look at being
penalty?
addicted.
Exactly. That's the way I wanna do my death with dignity. I mean, I
Yeah.
want it to be an awesome high.
If you haven't listened to it, Doug Stanhope's, stand up about his mom's death with dignity, is pretty awesome.
I will check it
Check
out.
that out. Yeah, check that out. Um, uh, yeah, so I mean, you're right. I mean, I was on the LNC for 15 months, 16 months, and it was fine probably the first year. We got to about June, and that's when all the stupidity happened.
Yeah,
All and not only did the stress of being called every name in the book, but the feeling how what kind of person I was becoming
yeah,
based off of it. I mean, I was starting to get very snappy and very jerk like. I you know I remember the first week after I resigned, and my seat was then handed over.
right,
Um, Being on Facebook, and I was making jokes again, like people knew me on Facebook for just being very humorous, and
right,
I was doing that again. Like I felt like, oh, okay, well, I'm like my humor is starting to come back. Like I was just so angry all the time, and
right,
I was really eating at me.
right, and
And I was,
it's exhausting too. That's
yes,
the other thing about it is that, trying to figure out the balance, but really having to suppress your own opinion at the same time.
oh yeah,
So brutal, and it's interesting, now we can both look at it from a removed standpoint, and to a certain extent, I look back at it and I'm like, you know what? Nick never concealed what he actually felt. He was very clear about all of that stuff, and that's probably a healthier way to be.
oh yeah,
And it might have been a little bit disruptive, but maybe that's the right thing to do. In that, as it turns out, appeasing the assholes didn't make them go away. So, here we are.
yeah.
But now I think, I do think that that thing of arguing that liberty isn't political is where everybody can make some progress. And, we can say, like I made a post the other day about, um, again, Dr. Jorgensen made a post saying finally one mandate in the rearview mirror, talking about the fact that the Supreme Court struck down the jobs thing,
Yeah.
And my post was, uh, please get vaccinated. Don't do it because uh, somebody told you to. Do it because you understand that it makes you safer,
Yes.
et cetera. And I knew that a lot of my friends were going to be unhappy about that. A lot, because I have friends who are Democrats, and even some other friends who are just like, yeah, no, we absolutely should be mandating vaccinations. You have to make everybody get stuff done. I'm like,
No.
really? Because think about the line that you're crossing at that point. The fact that you're saying that these people don't have autonomy about their body, that you can put something into their body, you can take something out of their body without their will. Like for example, there's this big controversy about children who are uh, mentally disabled and their parents have them sterilized.
Yeah.
And it's a huge question, but their parents doing it is so different from the government doing it.
Oh yeah. I
Because
mean, there have been cases where female prisoners in California were sterilized against their will,
exactly.
that we're still litigating, and just a complete mess. And yeah, you don't want the government making those decisions for you, as as right as you think that decision may be.
Right.
Because that decision eventually becomes, well, we get to determine whether you're a capable enough parent to be able to carry that baby to term, or we get to decide whether, uh, you know, uh, whether you get treatment for certain things because of the lifestyle that you've lived. That there's it is a very dangerous slope to travel down. And this the Supreme Court was right in its decision to strike down that OSHA ruling. My guess is that my understanding is that medical professionals were still uh, required off that ruling.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's still a problem. I know that we're facing all kinds of issues within the medical community based off of that decision. Um, I mean, I've got friends that are one lady who's got brain cancer can't get her surgery scheduled because there's not enough medical professionals, and so many beds right now are dedicated to those
COVID.
people who are unvaccinated sitting in
Yeah.
the ICU.
Right.
So I mean, it is a very complicated issue. Um, there are certain things that I'd like to see done to alleviate some of those issues, like perhaps build. Remember at the beginning of the whole COVID thing where we started, they started talking about putting big hospital units in like convention centers and things like that. They'd set up several convention centers to be kind of off hospital overflow units, and they weren't really needed.
Right.
When the first wave kind of died down before they were really needed.
Right.
Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I
it,
mean, the interesting thing about it is, like, I was watching football today, as many of us were,
yeah.
and there are a bunch of ads for cruise lines. I'm like, we've given up. We're just like, what?
I'm going on the cruise. Uh,
Fuck it. It's as dangerous as it's ever been, but let's just go on a boat and
Dude, that buffet
lick
is
the railing.
off the damn chain. That buffet is off the damn chain. I call it the face jammer on the Royal Caribbeans.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I mean, there's no question about it. The food's unbelievable. I mean, buffet, right? I mean, a great buffet is just,
you can't beat
I
that,
mean,
man. They give you these plates that are like,
as,
all
as I
huge.
like to say, one of my favorite jokes, buffet is one of my favorite words in the English language. Um, but yeah, I mean, a pan this big, right? Filled with bacon. I mean, really, there's more bacon than you could eat in a month in that pan.
Yes,
Just sitting
or
there.
you should ever eat, probably.
Yeah.
But
I my my headmaster from the boarding school I went to in the United States, good guy, good fundraiser, terrible manners. And at one point we were going through a buffet at some fundraising event. I was in a song and dance group for my high school, and we were all there. and he stopped at the buffet. And he was like eating food while we were walking through the buffet, and it was like pastry with like flaky crust and stuff like that. And when he moved on, there was an outline of his shoes where he'd been standing while he was eating. It's like,
Wait till you get to the table, man.
have you ever watched Worth It, the YouTube series? It's these two guys, and essentially they compare three things at different price levels to find out whether or not it's worth it.
Yeah.
And one of the best ones is the Vegas buffets. And so they start off and they go to like a $9 Vegas buffet. And they're like, I mean, this is awesome. This is amazing. And then they go to a $50 one. And they go to a $150 one. And it's just amazing. Buffet.
Yeah, the buffet on the cruise ship. There was actually a story this week that a cruise that was going down from New York to the Caribbean was stopped after the first. Well, they actually skipped several stops. They stopped in St. Martin. Now they are kind of dead in the water. Like they can't go anywhere. Apparently, there's a COVID outbreak on the ship. It's not a surprise. I mean, before going on a cruise ship, the norovirus or
Yeah.
a rhinovirus would cripple these ships. So there was always those stories about ships being stopped at sea and people basically crapping over the side of the boat because all the toilets were broken. There was that one
Yep.
Carnival cruise ship that went terribly awry.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and I want to. I mean, I love cruises. I love going on cruises. My 20th anniversary is this year, and it would be hard for us to go on a cruise at this point because
No, don't go. Don't
yeah,
go. I'm just saying, please, as a friend, don't go.
yeah,
So I will tell you, our experience is a little bit different. So I'd never cruised like big cruise ship cruise.
yeah.
But then for our honeymoon, we did a Norwegian Cruise Lines cruise out of Hawaii,
Mm,
which was pretty awesome.
yeah.
We went down to Kiribati, which is for calendar nerds, it's the first country on the international date line side. So
They actually voted to move the date line to the east so they could be the first country.
interesting. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah,
But they are the first country. So that was cool. And then we sailed around Hawaii, and that was awesome, stuff like that. And it was lax cruising. So like you didn't have assigned seating for dinner or anything like that. You just went to wherever, and there were some fancier restaurants that were sit down that weren't buffet, and you
yeah.
had to make reservations, but there are also buffets and stuff like that. And it was okay, but I don't think I would ever do it again. Now, it was also, we were young, and so I was cheap. And so I'm like, oh, I want the cheapest cabin I can get. And that's probably a mistake. I have heard that the difference of when you have a sea view, like with a balcony and you can go
Yeah.
out on that like you like cruising a lot more.
I don't know. I mean, we've done two, and both were interior cabins.
Yeah.
Um, the cheapest available. Uh, we found that we did more stuff.
Right.
Like we were out of the room so much that the cabin really didn't matter. Now, I guess that if I was wanting to decompress and be away from people, then the balcony would be definitely worth it. And I definitely do want to do a balcony at some point on a cruise. Uh, because I love just looking at the ocean. To me,
Right.
there's nothing better than a sea day just in the middle of an ocean. You can't see any land anywhere around you. You're just there.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I love cruising, but yeah, I'm gonna wait until it's a little bit safer.
Yeah.
We don't have Omicron has kind of changed the dynamic for this, but
It's right. I mean, it's interesting because people aren't getting as sick, but right, it's over 1 million cases a day.
oh yeah, I'm seeing
That's some serious shit.
there are a lot of friends that are like I I have not seen as many friends get COVID than I've have in the last month and a half.
Right.
Um, but NFL playoffs, man.
Uh,
Tough beat for you.
Brutal.
Tough
I mean,
beat. That was just a bad call at the end of the game.
that was astonishing, but I mean, the Cowboys did not deserve to win that game.
No, they were just I was watching Chris Sims talk about it, the halftime of the game that just ended. Pittsburgh saw their season end
Yeah.
42-21, I think was the final score.
The last game, hopefully for Ben Rapisberger.
Yes.
Um, yeah, no, it's a. I mean that's not surprising, but the Cowboys. I mean they've been bad for like 7 weeks, 8 weeks, and the problem is that there's enough talent on offense that when they face a bad team, they can explode and
Yeah.
just score all over the place. But when they face a good team, and San Francisco, they lost their two defensive stars.
Yeah.
But you'd have to say, right, the Cowboys held San Francisco to 23 points. The defense did its bit, especially considering the fact that they gave up 10 points really fast. They gave up 13 points on the first 3 drives. So after that, the Cowboys defense played great. The offense was terrible. And part of it is Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
You have to blame him because that guy, I don't know how he got this job in the first place, right? How do you get fired from a job where Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback?
Because
Right?
Aaron
I
Rodgers
would
didn't
just
be the coach anymore.
exactly. I mean, I would just say, Aaron, do whatever you want to do. And that would be great and you would win.
Yeah.
But instead, just terrible team, incredibly undisciplined. Like, I mean, that thing at the end, that fucking defensive holding, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that should have cost them the whole game. But if it hadn't, they would have had 30 extra cents.
Yep.
They could easily have won.
They
But
could
no.
have. I mean, San Francisco was playing the dumbest defense I think I've ever seen. Like you know, playing like 30 yards off the
Yeah.
line and then,
It
just
was
letting them
crazy.
go down the field and get out of bounds. So I was like, what are they doing? And then the last play where they just line up on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Honestly, why didn't you throw down the middle of the field? Like,
Exactly. Why not throw down the middle of the field instead of running down the middle of the field? And
yeah,
then the other thing about it is, not running and putting the ball in the official's hand as
yeah,
opposed to, what they did, which is just dumb.
yeah.
It's
You don't get to
but
spot your own ball, man.
but I can tell you, any Madden player would have said immediately as soon as they started running the ball, oh, they're not going to have enough time.
Yeah,
Because as soon as he started, I'm like, no, they are at least a second off from this.
yep,
And that's exactly what happened.
yep.
And it was insane. And
And they might have gotten it off if he had actually handed the ball to the referee, let them
yep,
spot it. I think
yep,
he would have had a second left.
yeah,
But the whole idea of running down the middle, when they basically gave you the entire middle of the field, why not run somebody down the middle and throw it to them? Like, they
yeah,
wouldn't have been able to stop them.
yeah. No, it was crazy. It was completely stupid.
Yeah.
And it was inexcusable.
Uh,
So that's good. I'm sad to see the Cowboys out. So I think that the talent on that team deserves more, but I think they've got that talent still.
do you think Jury fires McCarthy?
Boy, I hope so. Because so here's the interesting thing, right? Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn are probably going to get jobs elsewhere.
Yep.
Uh, and they probably deserve it. But the coach is terrible.
Yeah.
And it's weird to say that both coordinators are good and the coach is terrible.
Well,
But
that might be the move that they make is because they know that those 2 coordinators are about to get plucked off is to fire McCarthy and replace him with Moore or Dan.
right, right. I mean, I would actually. I mean, Dan Quinn took Matt Ryan to a Super Bowl. Right. That's
Was
an
it
impressive.
28-3?
Right. I mean, they were way the hell up. They should have won that
They
Super
should
Bowl.
have won it. If
Yeah, I
Matt
mean,
Ryan didn't take a stupid sack when they were driving down the field,
crazy.
they could have kicked a field goal and won that game and just guaranteed the win. And it
Yep.
was
Yep.
awful.
Yep.
That
Yep.
whole game was awful.
Yep. And we wouldn't be talking about Tom Brady as the GOAT anymore. Well,
No, no.
yeah, but still, right. I mean, that was one of the interesting things. So watching the Eagles game, that turned out exactly how I thought it would.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was, I mean, no surprise there. I thought. I mean, uh, thinking of the beatdown that Buffalo put on New England last night, that might have been enough to knock Brady off his game. That was just a clinic. I
Yeah,
was so
absolutely.
surprised at how easy that game was for Buffalo.
I mean, what it came down to is that Buffalo had a little midseason stumble. but they are back to form. And
Yeah.
that's the team they are. They're a great team. I
Oh
will
yeah.
say, as a Devin Singletary owner in fantasy football, I don't know why they were splitting carries with him and Zach Moss all year long.
Yeah.
Singletary is much better.
Yeah.
But
I didn't, and I think once they started going back to Singletary or giving him the majority of the carries, that made that's where the offense picked up again. I mean, I remember that the New England game that they played,
right in
the
the
first
rain,
meeting in Buffalo, not quite the same condition, but still very cold, very windy.
right.
Um, New England just took it. I mean, they look like a completely different team.
They did absolutely. New England. I mean, New England out physicaled them,
Yeah, and
which
then
was astonishing. And the thing is that there aren't a lot of physical teams in the AFC. And so I think that for Buffalo, it was sort of a surprise to have a team come in and play like that.
yeah,
But then they kind
well,
of like, well, fuck, we
Tennessee's
can
going to
play
be
like
that.
that too.
Yeah, Tennessee's going to be that physical team. That's gonna be their toughest test. Looks like Buffalo's getting Kansas City next week.
Right.
In Kansas City as the higher seed.
Yeah. And
That
Tennessee gets Cincinnati.
Yeah, Cincy. Cincy, that was an impressive win. That was
Yeah. I mean, who cares? Either team could have won.
yeah. I mean, I am happy for Cincinnati to break that 31-year.
Yeah, but they kicked so many field goals when they should have scored touchdowns.
Yes.
That will not win at the higher level.
No, I don't expect Cincy to go beyond this week, just because one, you're playing Tennessee in Nashville.
Right.
Uh, Nashville, Tennessee's getting back. They're running back.
Derrick
Um,
Henry's going to be back.
Derrick Henry will be back.
Shut
Uh,
up.
yeah, so he could have played the last game of the season if it meant anything.
Interesting.
They kept him off the field for the game. So Derrick Henry will be back. Yeah, I don't see Cincinnati going beyond that. But there are times. I mean, I tell you what, the Joe Burrow. There are times where that kid can do no wrong. Like
Oh,
he
he
just
looks
lights
great.
it up.
Chase looks great. They're just a little young right now.
Yeah, yeah. So I think
And that their tight
Tennessee's
end,
gonna use ball.
Uzama, he's really good too.
Oh yeah,
And Mixon's good. I mean, offensively, they've got the stuff. They just don't seem to have the killer thing that a really great team has.
yeah,
And I would make the same argument for the Cowboys.
yeah.
At no point in time is I don't know. Tennessee's going to be really tough. But I don't know. Buffalo to me, I think Buffalo is playing better than anybody else in the NFL right now.
I mean, I'm not a Bills fan. They're my favorite team in the AFC, but um, just to see, I would love to see them win the title just because of all the crap that Buffalo has gone through.
Sure, four
Um,
consecutive
they-
losses.
yeah, the four consecutive losses, the heartbreak that not only the Bills but the Sabers have just to get that city championship. Yeah, I know they won a championship back in the AFL days, but no one remembers that. And uh, you know, it would be nice to see them finally break that cycle. You know, um, let's see the other game. Yes, we talked about Cincinnati. I mean, I was pretty impressed with how they did it and how they brought off that win. Um, the the least interesting game was that Philadelphia Tampa Bay game. Um, I think Tampa gets the winner of tomorrow night's game between the Rams and the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, that's going to be a great game too.
It should be a great game. I mean, uh, the Rams had that.
Excuse me.
They did finally win the division, even though they lost the game last week. But because the Cardinals couldn't close out, I don't know if the Cardinals are kind of on a back. I mean, they've been kind of on a backslide the last half of the season. So um, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was excited for a great week of football.
Oh man.
I was excited for a great week of football. Uh, the only
Oh,
game that turned out remotely like I wanted it to was the Bucks.
yeah.
But now at least it's clear. I only have one team left. I mean, the Bucks are going to be my NFC team, and I'm going to root for the Bills in the AFC from here on in. I do. I mean, the idea. So first of all, the fact that Tom Brady has now been playing professional football for half of his life, that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Uh, that this will make 11 Super Bowls if he makes it into the Super Bowl, 11 Super Bowls in 22 years. That would mean that he was in the Super Bowl 50% of the years that he was in 50% of the years he was in the league. However, 2 seasons he didn't play.
Yeah. He was
So
injured one season. Yeah.
yeah, he was injured one season, and then one season he was behind Bledsoe all year.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is crazy. And the thing about it is, he is demonstrably better now than he was earlier in his career.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like so they were talking about this during the game, is he going to talk about? He did an interview with Willie McGinnis, and Willie McGinnis said, you talked about the fact that you wanted to play when you were 30, you wanted to play till you were 45. He's like, but here you are at 44, and you led the league in touchdowns and passing yardage. So what do you think about that? And Tom said, well, when I said that I was 35 and 45 seemed really far away. But
Yeah.
I mean, at what point in time what would he have to do to make it not seem worthwhile? And then, we all know George Blanda played till he was 51, but he was a kicker for the end of his career.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, really, what it will take is he's going to end up on the wrong end of a hit like Joe Montana was. I mean, Joe Montana did play a couple seasons with the Chiefs, but really it kind of ended his, competitive, Super Bowl threat every year.
well,
Career.
I mean, he took Kansas City to the play pretty deep in the playoffs. That team with
Yeah.
Marcus Allen. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It could be something like that. Could be a career-ending injury. Let's hope not. Something like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, just the way he looks right now, he's fucking on fire.
Well, I did not agree with the Buccaneers' decision to keep him on the field.
Insane.
In
Insane.
After the 3rd quarter was over, like, you don't need to play him in the 4th quarter. You're up 31 to they got it to semi kinda
Yep.
wishy-washy respectable, but, I mean, there was no chance that Philadelphia was coming back in that game. They just didn't
No.
have the firepower.
Yeah,
Jalen
yeah,
Hurts is not that great of a quarterback, so
and Blake Bortles, because Tampa Bay actually has a guy on the bench. Their third string quarterback was the guy who I actually thought was the best quarterback in the draft this year. Now I can't remember his name. Quarterback from Florida.
oh,
Hang on. Florida QB. Kyle Trask.
oh, okay, Trask, yeah.
I actually think Kyle Trask will be Tom Brady's successor because in
Or
many
he'll get
ways
traded off like Jimmy Garoppolo. 'Cause,
well,
Garoppolo was supposed to be his successor too.
but I watched Garoppolo play. I thought Garoppolo
Yeah,
looked pretty good,
Garoppolo's
except for that interception. And
yeah,
remember, he's playing with that busted hand, so
yeah,
he's in intense pain every time he runs a pass play.
yep,
But did fine, and they're going to get rid of him. A lot of teams, I think, would be very happy to have Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy Game Day, as we called
yep,
him in Massachusetts, as their starting quarterback.
yep.
As a Buccaneer, Kyle Trask, but you're right because so since we're just talking sports, there's a great documentary on YouTube on the '91 Falcons, which was the Too Legit team.
Yes.
And one of the fascinating things on there is how much Jerry Glanville just teased Brett Favre mercilessly, including telling him that he's like, you're not very good. I don't think you have what it takes to be a quarterback in the NFL. And Favre talks about it, he's like, yeah, he wasn't kidding. He really thought that, it hurt my feelings and I wanted to get out of there and blah, 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 blah. And so I just thought that was a really
The
strange
legend
thing.
starts
Yeah,
there.
they made a decision that Billy Joe Tolliver was the guy they were going to go with instead of Brett Favre. So
Oh, Atlanta.
yeah, pretty crazy. Always terrible losses. The ATL.
Yeah.
Um,
Although hey, congrats. My wife is a huge huge Georgia Bulldogs fan.
Yep.
She grew up in Central
That
Georgia.
was a great game.
Yeah, it was a great game. In fact, our property in Georgia butts up against the Herschel Walker family property.
Nice.
That train, if you ever watched the Herschel Walker story, when he was a kid, he would race the train.
Yep.
That train track rolls right in front of our property as well. So,
Interesting.
um, yeah, it's kind of cool to think about that little stretch of
I
train track.
saw Catherine Bernard,
Yes.
who is from Georgia, post before the weekend said, dear Lord, I think I speak for all of us here in Georgia that if only one Atlanta team can win, only one Georgia team can win, we're very happy to sacrifice the Falcons to whatever hell you'd care to consign them to.
Yeah, I mean I mean, especially after losing that Super Bowl to the Patriots when it was just in their hands.
Yep.
Yeah, that was probably the most painful uh,
Yeah.
of all the
It's
wounds that Atlanta has suffered.
right. I mean, I would say that is, I mean, the only question about it is that the worst Super Bowl loss to the Patriots that a team has experienced? Because that Seattle loss is also pretty astonishing.
Yeah, but the Seattle the thing is Seattle won the year before. So
Right.
Seattle had the win. They've got the trophy in their trophy
Right.
case.
Exactly. Exactly.
Atlanta has not even recovered from that loss.
Yeah.
They
Yeah. Yeah.
they have not had a winning season since they lost that game.
I'd like to point out that since then, they have not elected a Republican to Senate either. I don't know.
True. It just knocked Georgia all the way off, The
Exactly.
whole state just went complete
Right.
shit. But,
I'm
yeah,
pretty sure it's Stacey Abrams that caused the Falcons to lose.
she was the one that sacked, Matt Ryan.
That's definitely that's
Yeah.
definitely a Facebook post.
So, but, I talk about the Walkers, though. I'm, definitely supporting Chase Oliver for, Senate,
Yeah, great candidate.
running that race against Herschel Walker and, is that
And
Warnock?
Angela
Yeah,
McArdle is running against Marjorie Taylor Greene.
not Angela McArdle.
Angela
Pence.
Pence. Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
The good Pence.
The good Pence. Yes.
Yes. She's running against Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Which is awesome.
that shit. So yeah, definitely rooting for both of them. Uh, Herschel Walker's got the Trump endorsement. Although for a person in Georgia, that's probably the least uh, needed endorsement to run in a race in Georgia. Like Herschel Walker is still a hero there.
Sure.
But he's aligned himself with Trump, and I think that actually hurts him more than it helps him. So
I don't know. I mean, the point is that they're saying that it's all about celebrity.
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, Herschel Walker, like, I mean, I know him as a Cowboys fan, but he always seemed like a really nice guy.
he is.
I mean, he did also say that he never lifted weights, that his physique was all from like natural bodybuilding on the farm, which is ridiculous. But
Back in that day, weightlifting was not the. I mean, yeah, you had weight programs, but that wasn't as developed as it is
it
now.
wasn't as developed as it is, but he had muscles on muscles. He had weightlifters' muscles.
Yeah, I mean, he was just a naturally swole person, though. I mean, he was just amazing.
Yeah. But he danced with the Dallas Ballet for a while.
Yeah.
Talented guy. Weird choice for to run for Senate, though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's overcome quite a bit. I mean, he had the bipolar, or not bipolar, but multiple personality issue. I guess at some point during that, before he was diagnosed, he had some run-ins with domestic violence and stuff like that. But I guess he's better now, so that's good. But to align yourself with Trump I I do think that it's not going to be helpful for him.
I don't think so either.
But
We'll see. Is he running against any other Republicans?
I think there are a couple Republicans running in that race. Some minor state senator types running, but I fully anticipate Herschel to emerge from that primary with the win. Uh,
Wow.
so we'll see. Anyway, thanks to everyone who joined in tonight, Craig and Jeff, and let's see, Noah Simmons, one of the original crew members. Thank you for joining us tonight. And if you're out there, give us a like and a share on whatever you're uh, viewing us from. Give us hit subscribe on YouTube. Hit subscribe at the Facebook group page, and you'll get notifications about when we go live. So, but thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see everyone next week on the Political Deep Dive.
See you later, guys.
Auf Wiedersehen.
So long.